we talked about engines or being replaced by in-house engines, especially Unreal Engine. So we read about, and I think I still have this open. Here, there we go. So CD Projekt Red is one of the big guys. They're switching to Unreal Engine 5 after having used their in-house engine for more than 10 years. And we also talked about yesterday how From Software has been chunking out games ever since, well, 1994, really, but the best game, in my opinion, that they came out with was Dark Souls. And that was, I think it was 2010, somewhere around this, right? Yeah, 2011. And then ever since Dark Souls, they have been busy chunking out games. And the cool thing about this is, if you take a look at the times in between those games, 2011 and then 2014 for Dark Souls 2, and then also Dark Souls 3, look at this, 2 years later, it's already Dark Souls 3. Now, obviously, there has been 2 teams, right? It's not just one team. But then you take a look at all of these different release dates, and you can see that the difference between them is like 3, 4 years, 2 years, something like that. And they've been chunking out banger after banger. So seeing that someone like CD Projekt Red switches over to Unreal Engine is kind of sad to see, because they have been, at least for me, they have always been these gods of programming in C++ and having your in-house engine, and then they optimize the shit out of the game, and then they have Witcher 3, which runs really well, at least for me it did at the time, and it looked stunning, right? It was a good game that looked awesome. It had this hair physics going on at the time as well, which I tried out, but you know, you don't really tell the difference when you're just playing a character, but it was there. And them switching to Unreal Engine 5 made me think, well, is it better to maybe switch to Unreal 5? Or keep making your own engine, because I'm alone. Why would I use or make an own engine, spend a bunch of time? I've already done this. I spent like 2 years making a 2D engine. Why would I spend more time making a 3D engine if I could make a game like Black Myth Wukong or Palworld in Unreal Engine and maybe end up being very successful, have a good functioning game, while not perfect, of course, and, you know, look at those reviews, man. That's insane. And you guys know how big the player numbers were for those guys. And the same for Black Myth Wukong. These 2 games have been made in Unreal Engine. And they look awesome and, well, not perfectly optimized, but I can play the game at 60 frames per second on my computer, and most people can. And yeah, the game's awesome. And it's also made in Unreal Engine. But we took a look at the article, why are people switching over for Unreal, not for Unreal Engine, for CD Projekt Red. That was because they actually don't have talent anymore. Or let's say don't have talent anymore, let's not say that, but they are having issues finding talent that is also then able to work with their in-house engine, because it's not out in the public, it's private. So you don't know how the engine works. So when you get in someone that's new, you have to train them, and that takes time and effort, and also that costs money. And so if someone is already familiar with Unreal Engine and you're using Unreal Engine, that makes it easier to find new talent that works for you, because ultimately in the lifetime of your company, people are gonna leave, whether you are successful or not. I'm more, like in the case of CD Projekt Red, I'm pretty sure this has more to do with Cyberpunk failing, especially having like the release that they had, more so than, like, From Software doesn't have this issue at the moment, because they have been chunking out really good games and people love them. I've not seen, apart from a few idiots, I've not seen anyone who is angry at Pirates. Don't fucking do that! At From Software for making bad games. Right? Anyways, so here's another video explaining why people, or why the studios switched to Unreal Engine. But I'm a little bit confused by, is this due to DEI? So that means diversity, equity, and inclusion. So basically you have a bunch of white characters and you sprinkle, like salt, you sprinkle a bunch of diverse characters into your group just to make it diverse. But in actuality, maybe it shouldn't be diverse. Maybe it doesn't really make sense in the story. And then people can tell the difference and they're put out of the story, right? The game should tell a really good story and make you forget time, make you believe the story that is told to you. And if you can tell that it's not a real story, maybe because the writing is bad or because of these things happening, right? You're making a game about the Nazis and you're putting a bunch of black and woman characters, sorry, no, woman, like, let's say it like that, right? In the Nazi army, that would feel off and not true to the history. And so you would feel out of place in these cases. It would feel odd. And so, yeah, maybe this guy, like, because a viewer told me this guy has really good points. And I trust this viewer because he's been always nice. So let's see what his opinions are and why people are switching. I want to know from you guys, what do you think? Why do they switch? It's a win-win for both and win-win for player with good games too. This is what GGG also said, that it takes quite a bit of time to onboard someone onto their engine, but you can immediately start contributing with the editors and game content. Okay, so like, for example, for GGG, they have their in-house engine. And for them, it's easier if someone uses on their works on their editor, then just contribute to the engine directly, because the editor is just a user interface. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Yeah, you can onboard someone with the editor. Cyberpunk issues would have happened in Unreal 2 under the timeline. That was far too short. The engine is only responsible for so much. Yeah, I think you're right too. Studios switching to one engine means that less diverse engines will be created. Unreal will be monopolized soon. Maybe. Like for 3D, I can see that, yeah. There's not so many 2D Unreal Engine games, or at least I haven't heard about those. Anyways, so let's see here.
Now, as you can see, CD Projekt Red is switching from the Red engine to the
I'm in the
Unreal
wrong place.
engine.
Sorry about this. Hopefully I'm not covering anything.
You have Konami using Unreal Engine instead of their in-house engine. Halo Studios is doing as well, and rumors are that Bethesda is also switching to the Unreal Engine. So the question is, like, what's happening? And some people were saying, well, it's DEI, it's the diversity, inclusivity, and equity religion. Immediately you have people on Twitter going, it's like, oh, your brain is on DEI. Like, DEI cannot be criticized. It never does anything wrong. In fact, it's not even that big of a deal. It's just like something there that's good for companies to have, but like it does no damage. You know, like you guys, you're grift.
Yeah, I don't know how DEI should impact this at all. Like it doesn't make any sense because this has something to do with the content in the game and the story, and like, yeah, it's a bit odd.
You're part of the culture world. Everything about you is DEI. So I actually ask people, you know, like this is what you can do. You can reach out to people that are working at these AAA companies, middle management. I know
how do people get like contacts of these crazy engines? Like I never had someone on stream.
Couple of people that are close to upper management.
Or maybe you just message them on Twitter, right? And then they answer you. You just ask them there.
But
maybe that's what they do.
I generally did ask them, right? And I wanted to know, like, what is going on. And they gave me, like, plenty of reasons on
1.5 to 2, please.
Many of these studios are switching engines.
Okay, let's do 1.5.
And I did ask, okay, so, like, is there anything to do with DEI? And they basically said yes. Yeah, like, they would say, like, 40 to 50% of it was due to DEI. And one of the people that worked at Blizzard explained it to me in a way that I think I can explain it to you, and you would get what's happening. So, a lot of these old game developers that have a lot of experience under their belt.
Okay.
I want you to imagine how it was like when they started programming. They basically did it because it was fun.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a...
Yeah, so that's what you should do. Because it's fun, right? You create something cool and then you're happy that you created something. Like, yeah.
Job that would guarantee they would make hundreds of thousands of dollars. You got like some guys that in the 90s or early 2000s were genuinely passionate about gaming and gaming culture. And they got into these industries in order to have fun and possibly make a product that they enjoyed playing. And hopefully other people would enjoy as well.
True.
And this was like the mindset that existed.
This is how we got, by the way, this is how we got Diablo 1. This is how we got Warcraft. And this is how we got World of Warcraft. And StarCraft 2. This is how we got those games, by the way.
That Blizzard and Bethesda and many of these other companies. And this mindset got us some of the best games that pretty much made our childhood great. Unfortunately, however, as time moves on, you have the diversity hiding. Now, the diversity hiding isn't the problem itself. It's the fact that you need a diversity officer. You need to change the entire corporate culture around this shit. So all of a sudden, you're not allowed to make jokes. All of a sudden, you get summoned to these corporate retreats that lecture you about white privilege and about cisgender heteronormative and why you're a piece of shit because you're a man. And then you have to deal with all sorts of colleagues that aren't as good as you, but they're incredibly arrogant, and they know that just because they got in there with the idea of filling a quota, they can't be kicked out because then they can file a lawsuit. So you gotta tip.
Wait, is that actually true? Is that how it works? Are there any receipts? Yeah, true. Yeah, no, because you say so. The only receipt that I have, which I believe is Timothy Kane, the creator of Fallout, who helped out with... He was essentially in the company helping out for the online game. It's a big one, MMORPG. I don't know which one, what the name is. Like, I'm not in the loop for those. But he was helping with a big one. Yeah, he was working on Wildstar too, but on another one. I think it was New World, actually. Timothy Kane, yeah. And so he was talking about his time there and how he wanted something very simple from a programmer there, which I think it was in a way where like each enemy in the game has a list of targets that it follows. And so let's say target number 1 is what he's currently attacking, and then the target number 2 would be the target that he would choose if target number 1 didn't exist. So like a sorted list of priority targets, essentially. And it's probably like references or whatever, like pointers, you know, C++ kind of thing. And he wanted something to do with this list. So essentially order the list in a different way and do something to number 2. Whether that be, I don't know, deal damage to number 2, follow number 2, don't follow number 2, something very, very basic. And so like the functionality was already there. Like, let's say don't follow number 2 is literally just, you can think about a program, call the function don't follow number 2. Very simple. And the person that was supposed to do that, I think he told him like 6 weeks for that. And he was like, wait, but I can't do this in an hour. And then he had to go to the manager to get that resolved and brought down to, I think, 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Which was crazy to hear. And then some other things like, okay, so he wanted to do a whiteboard, which is like a physical whiteboard in the office, like an actual physical thing, nothing in the computer. And there's a bunch of tasks in the whiteboard, and then you write down your name below the task, who is doing current tasks. So that's like some sort of responsibility out in the public, physical public, that for everyone to see. And people said, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna quit if I have to do that. So Kanban board, but an open Kanban board, essentially. It was fine online, but not open. Something like that. So this is the only receipt that I have, and I trust the guy because he seems very genuine. He doesn't stand to gain anything by talking about this, essentially. And yeah. So like about the DEI hiring, I can't really speak. Like when you guys say yes, I don't know. But I can see that there can be some issues related to that, right? And toxic positivity is also a big one that seems to have happened to Ubisoft, where they make Concord, there's a bunch of issues with Concord. Let's not talk about the character, but let's say gameplay, but you're not allowed to talk about that. If you talk about that, you're seen as an asshole, which in my opinion is the worst thing that you can do when you're creating content for someone else, because ultimately the way you make good content is by feedback. And if you can talk badly about something, well, then you get Concord, right? And then you have to shut down. Or what is the latest release? The like something unknown 9 or something? This game right here? Which is, ooh, yeah, that's not doing too hot either. Mixed reviews. Oh wow, and yeah, that doesn't look too good, huh? So that's like, that's less players than Stardust, and this one is a big AAA game. So yeah, like, seems to me that could be toxic positivity and maybe DEI, but he needs to show receipts, right? He needs to, unless someone can't talk about it, right? Because they're under NDA. Never even heard about it? Me too. I've never heard about it either. I only saw some Twitter posts about this and I was like, damn.
All around them. And they bring all this political correctness nonsense and they tell you how you can talk and how you can address other people. And now you have like this other...
So like how you can talk, I can believe that. Like toxic positivity, you know, Ubisoft and their games. I can see that, right? Maybe not so much about DEI, but about that for sure. I can see that, yeah.
Individual that looks androgynous and their hair is colored in different ways and they have like different pronouns every day. And you know that if you make a mistake, they will report it to HR and get fired. So basically, like, the original developers that went in there because it was fun to make video games, they realized that all of a sudden it's not fun. You know, all of a sudden you have, like, this corporate culture that's incredibly hostile to fun. It's incredibly sanitized, and, you know, the companies are also now much bigger, and you can't just make changes off the cuff and have your own ideas. Like, if you just want to change a line of code, you gotta get it through, like, 10 people.
So that's what I think is happening to Blizzard, by the way. They had, like, 9,000 people working on Diablo 4, and the release of the game was tremendously bad. Like, I think the story sucks, the gameplay sucks, the endgame sucks, the item progression sucks, the skills are boring, you don't really have many options on skills. Like, the entire package, I think, for the time spent and the effort put into, the output was just way too low. And how does that happen? And like, let's not talk about Uber Lilith, okay? Like, let's not talk about those stupid hitboxes that hit you from like way too far away. You're not even in the fucking wave, okay? And you're still getting hit by this shit in one shot, of course. Because it's a one-shot mechanic, right? It needs to one-shot because we can't build a good boss otherwise. So yeah, like I think that's what happens. Like, you can't really, you have too many people, and oftentimes these people don't really know what they're doing too. In a small team, you can just talk to each other, right? You can bounce ideas off each other.
Stamp it, and usually those 10 people are even dumber and more retarded than you are, right? So like all these old game developers that have made a lot of money, they made hundreds of thousands of dollars, they don't need to put up with this shit. They don't need to put up with this shit, so they can just retire. You know, they can just make their own indie projects, or they can make YouTube channels, or they can do anything else besides to put up with the horseshit. So you have like all these old game developers that are leaving, and now you have the in-house engine. Well, the problem with the in-house engine is that someone has to teach you how to use it. Yeah. It may not be very difficult, but, you know, it may have its quirks, it may have its the different things. It's not something that you can actually learn online most of the time. So
no, you can't.
If all the old developers, or most of them, are quitting, like, who's going to teach the new guys, the diversity hires? Who's going to teach them how to use the in-house engine?
Yeah, I can see that. So actually you have talent leaving, and then you have very few people that do understand the engine, and then you have to teach that to these people. I can see how Unreal Engine fixes this in a way where obviously you're still gonna get kind of buggy quests, but less buggy quests because the people have been using Unreal Engine a lot. And it's easier for you to learn Unreal Engine and make less mistakes in Unreal Engine. So like, this is how I see it. I don't even think that the developers per se are like at fault. I don't even think at all that they are at fault. I think what's happening is, and that happened to me, you get thrown into a company. You get lucky, let's say they hire you, and you have no idea what you're doing. And that's not your fault. Right? That's not your fault. You're supposed to learn there. You're supposed to get onboarded, and you're supposed to gradually increase in skill until you can make meaningful changes in, let's say, the engine or the game. And essentially, you are at a lost cause because it's too overwhelming. That's too much that's going on for you. And obviously, you're going to make mistakes. And if they don't have enough people teaching you, then what you're going to do? You're going to try out certain things, they don't work. You are maybe even under time pressure. Like, I do feel bad for those developers who are like getting into these companies and then they have to figure out the engine, try harder, yeah, like literally try harder, figure out the engine, and then there's a bunch of people that are working already, and yeah, it's probably overwhelming.
Are doing, it's like, okay, well, obviously using our own in-house engine has advantages because we don't have to follow any terms of service, it's cheaper, it's ours, we can make modifications, but at the end of the day, like all these diversity hires that are coming, like they do not know how to use our in-house engine, and there's no one to train them. So it's a lot easier if we just switch to something like the Unreal Engine. And basically, this is pretty much what's happening. Now, the problem with this is that, again, the industry is becoming centralized. And as we got to see, like, many of these engines can have various terms of service. So, for instance, if the Unreal Engine says, okay, well, in new terms of service, we do not allow games that have any portrayals of sexism in them, right? All of a sudden, you can have games like GTA, where you have, like, the hookers and all of that, you know, whatever their definition of sexism is, well, now you can't have it in the game. Or if they were to say, yeah, we just want to
true. I mean, but only if Unreal becomes a monopoly, but even then, why would they do that? Like, I guess they can be infested by some stupid people too, but yeah, it's unlikely to happen.
Data from your customers, so we want to measure how many installs there are. So if you're using the Unreal Engine, you may get like a little bit of a spyware on your PC that harvests data and information from your hardware in order to give it to Unreal, and then Unreal can sell it to third parties. I'm not saying they're doing it, but like there would be nothing stopping them, and it wouldn't be illegal or anything. You just have to agree to the.
I mean, Ubisoft was selling data. Sounds like hypothetical scenario, yeah. It's like what he's talking right now is all hypothetical. However, this is not too out of the box thinking that Unreal could sell your data, because Ubisoft was doing it too, and they are getting sued for this.
And if all the AAA gaming companies are using the Unreal Engine, because as we get to see, it's CD Projekt Red, Konami, Halo, and many others, well, what are you going to do? It's either you're going to choose not to play games, or you're going to have to choose to put up with it. So this is pretty much what's happening. And again, it's not a good thing that we're getting more centralization. In a way, it would be good because, like, yeah, I mean, everyone can learn at home how to use the Unreal Engine, and when they start the job, they already know everything, and then they have, like, forums for troubleshooting and stuff. But from a consumer point of view, it's never good when everything gets centralized like this.
No, because it creates a monopoly, right? And I saw some bad stuff about Steam, too. We're going to talk about this in the future as well, but yeah, I hope Steam stays good.
We're moving to a time where the internet becomes more and more centralized, and when it comes to gaming, the engines themselves are going to have a lot of sway. Like, they are going to be able to influence the culture in gaming. And again, imagine if Unreal says, yeah, we don't want a game that sexualizes women. I mean, they can, right? Like, it would be part of the TOS, and all of a sudden, all the Nidals and Draenei, you know, they would have to be covered up, made more masculine, etc., etc. Again, I'm not saying it's happening now, but I generally don't see what would prevent it from happening. Because what I notice with a lot of these companies, they're really nice when there's competition. I mean, think about Patreon, think about Twitter. Like, Twitter used to be the free speech platform.
Monopolies aren't good, but other than that, I'm not really buying this video. Yeah, so the reasons for switching to Unreal Engine we discussed, and I think that's a good thing, to be honest, for the companies, and maybe they bring us better games, but the rest, like the hypothetical stuff that he's talking about now, I don't buy that either, because I don't see a financial gain from that. And so ultimately, like, what do they want to do, right? What is their objective? You can see that for most AAA games, it's definitely money. And so, like, would there be a financial gain by making sure that you can't build a certain type of game anymore? I don't see that. And so it doesn't make any sense, because there's also no reasoning. Like, there's no, it doesn't make sense, actually.
Platform, and they were championing that, and you can even say the N-word and nothing would happen. And it's the same with Patreon. But the moment they started getting monopoly in the market, the moment they have no more competition, all of a sudden they're like, well, we need to trust the safety councils, and we need to decide who gets to use the platform and who doesn't. They become cheeky little shits. So this is what I don't like about this. I genuinely do not enjoy the fact that everything is becoming centralized, but, you know, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just the times. So let me know what you guys...
I don't think everything is becoming centralized. So here's how I see this might go down. So we will most likely either get better games because people are switching to Unreal Engine. We have to wait for Elder Scrolls 6. Hopefully that's going to be good. Hopefully, man. Just hopefully, bro. Not another Starfield, please. And then maybe the Witcher game is going to be good. Right. Let's hope. Like, if these games are good, then I think it was a good decision. I still think it's a good decision, because ultimately the onboarding process will be good. However, I also see the GGG's take. I like that a lot too. If you have an engine in-house and you have an editor, well, how long does it take you guys? You know, you're experienced with engines. You have used Unreal Engine, you have used Unity, maybe tried out Godot, Game Maker, whatever you tried out. Maybe you made your own engine, and you get into a company, you don't know the engine, but you have an editor in front of you. Like, how fast could you learn the editor? Will be a couple of days, right? So I see this, I can see why with Unreal Engine, especially if you're changing the engine, but isn't the job of an engine to be generic enough so that you can build all kinds of games? There's always going to be the same feel for the type of game that you're in, but very few people actually need to change the engine. It's like maybe 1-2 people need to change the engine. When it comes down to, let's say, changing graphics or changing how physics behave. GGG case is super specific. How often does the founder of the company, also the guy who created the engine, accept indies? True, but let's talk about the Red engine from CD Projekt Red. I'm 99.999% sure that this engine has an editor. So if you're getting into CD Projekt Red, you should just work with the editor. If it doesn't have an editor, then what did they do for 10 years? It does have an editor, because I watched the GDC talk, so they do have an editor. Half of their graphics programmers left to Epic. That's when they switched, yeah. I know, bro. Anyways, guys, I think the part at the end was a little bit odd, but the part before, I can't really speak to that. I've never worked in a AAA environment. I would have to speak to someone from, let's say, Ubisoft, which, you know, other people did instead of me, and the toxic positivity in this particular company, Ubisoft, was present, which I can see why a game like Concord can happen. About the DEI, I don't know. Like, we would have to have some receipts, some actual receipts to believe that, right? You shouldn't always, and I like the idea that Pirate Software talks about this, you shouldn't just believe what someone says on the internet, okay? Just because someone on Twitter says that in this company, the DEI problem causes the typical programmers to leave because they can't make normal changes anymore, doesn't mean it's real, okay? So we have to take this with a grain of salt. But ultimately, I think it's cool that so many people are switching to Unreal Engine because we have these awesome games in Unreal Engine. Black Myth Wukong and Palworld. Those are awesome games. And so, yes, more. Please, more!